Hey everyone, it's Project SPC, and today I'd like to do a video on how to create a case for something like a single board computer in Fusion 360. This is more like a beginner's version, like you just came from Tinkercad or you just want to start using Fusion 360, and your goal is to create a case for some sort of electronic project. So I've got a Raspberry Pi 4 model that I've downloaded from the internet here. We're going to use this as our basis to create a Raspberry Pi 4 case, and I'm going to walk you through how I go about designing something like a case for an electronics project. So, if you're coming from someplace like Tinkercad, you're used to using like blocks and shapes. I used to use Tinkercad. I used it for like a year, and I kind of regret that I didn't switch over to something more powerful sooner. So, hopefully, this video can get you guys kickstarted into using a more powerful tool like Fusion 360. So in Fusion 360, a lot of the things are based around sketches, which you can find up here, and extruding those sketches that you make, which would be right here. So I don't have any of my case designed yet. I'm going to actually do that right now. So I'm going to start with a sketch, and I'm going to put it in the same flat axis that the Raspberry Pi 4 is in right now. So now I've got it parallel to the Raspberry Pi 4, and I'm going to create a rectangle so you have some different shapes to choose from. Up here you can use single points, you can use a rectangle, a circle. I'm going to pick a rectangle, and I'm going to create the bottom for my Raspberry Pi 4 case. So I'm just going to kind of go beyond the edges here a little bit. We can always fine tune that a little bit later. I've got my rectangle made, and I'm going to say finish sketch. I want to turn this into a 3D object. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to go to the back side, and I'm going to click on that rectangle that I just made, and I'm going to extrude. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude, and it's going to ask me which direction do you want to go. I don't want to go into my Raspberry Pi 4. We can see that if I go this direction, I'm going to be going into my Raspberry Pi 4. I don't want that. I'm going to go backwards here. So it's going to be a negative value. I'm going to go with 3 millimeters for my case bottom thickness. So I typed in -3, and I'm going to say OK, and it says new body, OK. So now I've got the bottom for my Raspberry Pi 4 made. Okay, so step one done. Let's go about, let's take a look at the mounting holes. So I've got my part here. I can see it off here on the side, bodies. It says body 2. And we'll call this bottom for now, just so it's easier to see. I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to hide that so I can actually see my model again. I would like to create some sort of mounting platform for this. I see that I've got my shapes that are somewhat visible here. Let's go ahead and let's make a sketch. Now this is where we can take those mounting hole locations from the Raspberry Pi 4 model and we can transfer them over to our case. So I've got my mouse clicked on the bottom of this Raspberry Pi 4 here. I'm going to say new sketch. That's going to help us locate these holes here. So I would like to use a circle, and I'm going to click on this up here, and then we're going to draw some circles where these mounting holes are. I think maybe it would be good to do the whole thing. So I just clicked on circle. It was set to center diameter circle, so when I click somewhere, it's going to start from the center and work its way out. I think I want to use a point-to-point circle. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to drag that all the way down. That looks pretty good. So there's one circle, and let's scroll on down here. And there is circle number 2. Let's do circle number 3. And let's do the last circle, circle number 4 right there. Okay. So I've got my 4 circles made. Let's go ahead and let's add the center hole here. So let's go, oops, I don't want that. I do want a center hole circle here. So I'm going to get the spot where the screw comes through. I'm going to use a center diameter circle. So I'm going to click here in the center and I'm going to pull it out, and I think I want my screws to come in from the bottom. So it looks like these use 3 millimeter. Maybe not. Maybe these are 2.5 millimeter mounting holes. Um, which I don't think I have any of those screws. So let's make this a little bit wider than our Raspberry Pi 4. Let's say 3.5. Okay, and let's go do the same thing to the 4 other holes. 3.5. Okay. 3.5 and 3.5. Okay, so I've got my donuts created here. I'm going to actually extrude those onto my other platform. This will actually set the kind of like the reference for where the Raspberry Pi 4 is going to sit in the case. I kind of want these to be like standoffs because I know that there's a SD card slot on the bottom that needs some clearance. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say finish sketch. And now I've got these donuts that I can grab here. So there's one, and I'm going to hold my shift key and I'm going to grab the other donut. And I'm going to come over here, shift key, grab this donut, and last shift key, I've got 4 donuts selected. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to bring my case bottom over here, and I'm going to say extrude. Now I've got my 4 donuts selected. These are going to be my standoffs. I'm actually going to click on the bottom here, and it's going to extrude those circles for me. You can see those right there. And we're going to see down here in the operations table, it says join. I don't want to join this because if I say join, it's going to make the Raspberry Pi 4 join the standoffs, which is going to join the bottom of the case. I don't want that. One way I can avoid doing this is I can hide the Raspberry Pi 4 model. So when I say join, it's actually going to join that to the bottom of my case, which is what I do want. Otherwise, I could have said something like new body and it would have created 4 donut bodies, and I could add those to my case right after. So actually, that might not be a bad idea. So you could do join as long as you hide the Raspberry Pi 4 model, or you could do new bodies. I actually do the new body route here. Let's actually do that. So we've got 4 new bodies that have been added. I'm actually going to grab the bottom of my case here, and I'm going to say combine. And I'm going to go and I'm going to say tool bodies, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to say join. And now they're all back into one. So I got my Raspberry Pi 4 now. I've got my standoffs. And let's go ahead and let's make those holes here go all the way through. And then we're going to modify them on the other side to accept some sort of screw. So let's go ahead and let's grab all 4 of these circles, hold the shift key, and start selecting the other holes. There we go. And I'm going to do an extrude, but this time I'm actually going to be removing material. So I'm going to say extrude. I'm going to say cut. And right now the arrow is pointing in this direction. I want it to go that way. So it doesn't really matter how far you go. I know I've gone through the material. So 25 millimeters is great. If I click OK, it's going to cut the holes. And we're all set to clean it up on this side. Let's make sure we got it on the right side. So let's go make a new sketch. We're going to create a new sketch, and we're going to come down here and we're going to base it off these holes. See, that's 1.75. So let's make the secondary hole 6 millimeters. I think this takes a 2.5 millimeter screw. So I think 6 millimeters is enough. Now I've got this circle feature here. As long as the circle feature is recognized on the sketch, it'll actually tell you where the center of the circle is, so you don't actually have to do any work to figure that out. There's 1 and 6 here, 6. Okay, so now we've got some donuts, and we're actually going to extrude those in so we can make slots for the screw head when you go to mount your Raspberry Pi 4. So let's go ahead, select all 4 of these. The screw head's probably going to be 1.5 mm thick, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my extrude, and I'm going to do minus 1.5. It's going to cut into the material 1.5 millimeters, and now we've got a slot for the screw to rest on when you go to install your case. Okay, let's bring back our Raspberry Pi 4 here, and I guess we should probably start building some walls. So I'm going to, let's hide the Raspberry Pi here for a second. Let me grab this, and I'm going to do a new sketch. So I'm going to build some walls off this base here up. So let's say create sketch, and let's do 2 mm walls all the way around, and we'll check and see if that is good. So right now I'm just going to draw some rectangles. It doesn't really matter how you do it. So I'll say 2 mm on that side. Oops, 2, and I'll drag it all the way down. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to make it 2 mm locked. And I'm going to bring my rectangle all the way up. And then last 2 mm. And there we go. So now I've got a bunch of rectangles to select. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, so now I've got the edge where my walls are going to be selected. I'm going to hit extrude. Let's bring it up 5 mm and see where it rests in relationship to the Raspberry Pi 4. So just taking a quick look around, it looks like there's some clearance there. Let me hit the front button. So I got some clearance there. We've got clearance here, and it doesn't look like we have any clearance here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to push this wall out. So we've only been using extrude up to this point. Extrude is a very powerful tool. It's good when you want to work with different objects in relationship to each other, but extrude also can interfere with the objects that you're working with. So when you don't want to interfere with the other objects that you're working with, like accidentally cutting something you don't want to, there's another thing called press pull. For basic shapes like this, I could say, let's do press pull on this face right here, and I'll say 1 mm. So that's almost like you did an extrude of 1 mm on this, except it doesn't join anything, it doesn't cut anything, it's just working with that one face. And on the opposite side here, I'm going to click, I'm going to say press pull, and I'm going to say -1, and let's see where we are. Okay, so we've got some clearance on these. That looks good. So I've moved that back 1, so we still have a 2 mm thick wall. And that is that. So I'm not worried about this. I think this is a headphone jack here. We're going to put a through hole when we bring the wall up anyway. So that will fit right straight into that wall. Okay, so I think we're okay with the, oops, that didn't work out. So let's do an extrude, and that should be okay. Okay. All right, so we've got the base of our case done. We've got the standoffs. We've got the slot for the screws to rest on. And let's go ahead and let's build the wall all the way up now. So when you want to measure something, this is something that you might run across when you are working with your model. If you want to measure how far like two surfaces are away from each other, so I want to know how far do I have to bring the wall up so that I can get it above these USB ports and the Ethernet port. So if I go over here and I say inspect in this measure button, and I click on this wall here and I click here, we can see that they are 14 millimeters apart just about. So I know I've got to bring my wall up at least 14 more millimeters before I can create the top and we can close it off. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close that and I'm going to use a press pull because I have this headphone jack that's interfering with this wall. I don't want to extrude and join them by accident, so I'm going to use the press pull. And let's say 15 millimeters. Okay. Oops. Let's do 5 more. Ooh, no, 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 no. Let's do 20. There we go. All right. Okay, so I got my walls up high enough that we can actually close this off. But before we do that, I would like to get our interface pieces out. So let's go ahead and let's hide our bottom piece here and let's go ahead and create a sketch. So I'm actually going to sketch out these USB ports and the Ethernet port first, and we're actually going to extrude the holes through the case so we can access them from the outside. Let's start with these USB ports here. Let's say create sketch. And I'm not going to do anything to them. I'm actually just going to leave it just like this. I'm going to say finish sketch. Now I have this box here. And let me grab those. Let me bring my case back into the picture. I'm going to say extrude and let's do 10. And it automatically set it to a cut, which is what I do want. I'm going to say OK. And now I can see my USB ports from the outside. Starting to look like a case. Let's do the same thing for the other pieces here. So let me do create sketch. And we're just going to say finish. We're not going to do anything to it. We're going to grab all these pieces. Unhide the case. We're going to do an extrude 10. And it automatically put it into the cut, which is what we want. If it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't, make sure you set it to cut. Otherwise, you're probably going to end up joining pieces that you don't want together. Let's go ahead and cut. Now we can see those there. Now let's go grab the Ethernet port and new sketch. I'm done with it. Let's go grab those features. Let's unhide my case and extrude. Say 10, cut, and there we are. Now we can see that as well. Excellent. All right, let's go over to this side. What do we have over here? So we got 1, 2, 3. Let's see if we can do all 3 of those in one sketch. And it looks like we can. So I'm going to do an extrude, and it doesn't look like I can. 10. Bummer. So I guess I'm just going to do this a bunch of times. Extrude 10, cut, done. And let's do this one. Create sketch. Ooh, I went too far. Let's go back. Do an extrude 10 and cut through that. And then we're going to do the last one, which is the headphone jack. Okay, and sketch. Now this one's going to be a little bit tricky because it doesn't go all the way through the material. So we're probably going to have to do an extra step to get that cut through. So let's do 10. We're going to cut that and then we're going to unhide it. Let's unhide the Raspberry Pi. Yeah, I see it didn't go all the way through. So let's go ahead and let's hit that with an extrude. We're going to say -5. It should take material away, which it did. And then we have the hole that we need. That's looking pretty good. Now, I know that these pieces over here, we may have to make these walls a little bit thinner for the IO. And the same thing over here, this may have to get thinned out just a little bit. just so that when you plug it in a USB port, the plastic casing doesn't hit the side of the case, and you're not able to insert your USB or your USB-Cs or your HDMI cable here. So let's go ahead and let's clean those up just a little bit. Let's not do it that way. Let's actually get rid of the sketch. Let me unhide the sketch that I just made. And let's just go manually in here and let's push and pull. So let's add, let's say, a millimeter on each side. Oops, I want to go -1. -1. Excellent. And let's do -1. And let's do -1. So this is one way that you could do it. You could go and you could press pull um, all four sides. That's one way. We could have gone back into the sketch that we just made, which is sketch 14. You can right click the sketch as long as you've got it selected. You can go back to editing it if you need to. So I've got my sketch here. So if I come over here and I say, let's do 1 millimeter, that's going to give me one up. Let's go one over this way. There we go. And then let's just do a box here. Let's see if we, now let's go and do a line here. And let's do a line over here. And then you could just do a box across, say end sketch, and you could just do it this way as well. Going to do an extrude, we'll say -5 because that'll bring it all the way through. So we've made that hole a little bit bigger. And let's go do, I guess we'll do it the old-fashioned way this way. Let's do -1. And as long as you don't have anything interfering, you could always do the extrude route too. I could say extrude, I could say -1. I'll take it back 1. Just make sure it's not interfering with anything else. And -1. And then we're going to do one last one, which is right here. All right, so those have been widened a little bit. Now we've got this circle here. I do want to make that circle a little bit bigger, and I would like to use a new circle because it looks like it stole the circle shape that's here. That's probably like an STL or something like that. And it had defined a bunch of surfaces. I want to make that nice and clean. So I am going to add a circle here. Let's see, are you going to tell me where the center is? Not really. Let's do a 2-point circle here. Go all the way across. So it's almost 6. Okay, now let's go a little bit beyond that. Let's do a center circle. Yep, okay. And let's go maybe 7. Yeah, let's see what 7.5 does. Okay, let's try that. So let's grab our circles that we just made. 1 and 2. We're going to say extrude. We're going to say -5 because I know that'll cut it. And that did not cut it. Okay. Oh, it did. That's interesting. Okay, so I guess I didn't get everything that was there. That's okay, we can take care of this. Let's go back into the sketch. And let's grab that whole thing. Do an extrude, -5. Okay, now we got rid of everything. There we go. Okay, so we've got our I/O over here. We've got our USB ports over here. I think I'm missing an SD card. Let's save real quick. All right, let's bring back up our model down here. Let's see where our SD card is. Ooh, what happened here? I just created a bunch of something. I'm not sure what. All of these, they look like they're not the ones that I want. Oh, I know what's going on. This is a I've got design timeline capture history on. I don't want that on right now. So I'm going to get rid of that. That should get rid of all my. So when you have design capture history, it's good for figuring out what you did in what order to get what you made, but it also ends up playing around with your extrudes. So if you, it makes everything reference each other. And when you go and you extrude something and it deletes something that was a reference plane, then it starts getting wacky. I don't really like to use that, so I just kind of ignore that for the time being. Let's go over here and let's grab this surface right here for our SD card. And let's do create sketch and let's extrude that out. So extrude, let's say 10. It says cut, so let's go ahead and cut it. So you're going to see now that's not really a good shape to use. So let's go ahead and let's do an extrude, and I'm actually going to go all the way to the other end. And if I click the surface here, it's actually going to cut that all out. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Extrude, and let's put it to that surface there. And we are almost all set. All right, now we're all set. Now I think we have the slot for the SD card. So I think I'm going to start, let's see. We've got a little bit of space here. Let's see how much clearance we have between our ports and our USB connectors here. We've got 0.5 millimeter. That's not bad. That's actually seems pretty reasonable. Although I think because we have these holes here, we could probably make that come in. So I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. I'm going to say press pull, and I actually want to move this 0.5 in, and I want to make these walls a little bit thinner. I think I'm going to go 1.5. So I added 0.5 millimeter on the other side, so I'm going to take away one over here. Makes it a little bit thinner so you don't have to worry about stuff hitting each other. Let's do the same thing on this end here. Let's see how far they are apart. I'm inspecting, and they're 0.7 millimeters apart. So I would probably move that in 0.7. Let's make sure the Ethernet thing is okay too. Yeah, okay. So let's pull that in 0.7, and then let's go and take away 1.2, and let's widen this just a little bit. No, I don't think I want that. I think I want to take away 0.25, and I'll add that to the outside here. Okay, so that's pretty good. I see that there is some clearance here. Although I think I do want that. I don't think I want to interfere with that, because if I'm going to put the board in, I can put it off to the side a little bit, and I can kind of get these IOs here into this slot when I go to put my case together. Okay, good, we're good. All right. So we have, what do we have now? So I think that wall's pretty good. I think that wall's pretty good. Let's go make the SD card slot just a little bit bigger. Ooh. All right, let's go this way. Let's make this wall a little bit thinner, I think. Let's do minus 0.5. And oops, not the one I wanted. Let's do minus 1.5. Let's open that up a little bit. do -1. And let's get creative here. So I want to open up the bottom here a little bit, but I also don't want to, if I click on this, I see that I've got the whole surface. I don't want to modify the whole surface. I just want to modify this little area where the SD card slot goes in. So if I come over here and I say, let's do an extrude, let's go all the way down to here, and it's gonna close up that wall. I don't want that. I want to say cut. And I want to do maybe 3.5. That looks pretty good. And now I can take this edge here and I can push that in. Let's just use a push. And we'll push that in. Let's see, 4 millimeters. Yeah, that should be pretty good to get to the SD card. So that should be okay. Now we've got a hole for our SD card. So far it's actually looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and let's put a top on this, I guess. So let's grab this ring here. Let me make sure everything is 1.5 millimeters. That's still 2. So let's do -0.5. Okay, so that's all set. That's all set. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's grab this ring here, this outside wall, and we're gonna do an extrude. We're gonna do 1.5 millimeters, but this time we're actually gonna make it a new body, and we're gonna make this kind of like the lid. Um, yeah. So we're gonna do new body. We're gonna do 1.5 millimeters. Okay. Now I'm gonna hide the bottom piece here, and I'm actually gonna grab this. I'm gonna do an extrude. Now before, when we've clicked on different surfaces to extrude something, like if I click this, it looks like it's going to extrude, and it probably will. Um, if you want to be sure that it will go the full distance, use the to object here. So if I click on it now, it's guaranteed to make sure that it goes all the way. So now we've got our lid created, and I can bring back the bottom of my case here. Okay. And so we have a lid. Now I think it would be a good idea to create a hole for the IO. So let's go down here. Let's grab this surface. Let's do a new sketch. And let's do finish sketch. And let's do extrude. Let's bring back our lid. Let's do 50, just to make sure it goes all the way through. And we've created all these little bodies here. I'm not interested in them. So let's find the one that's really important, which would be the lid. So we can say find in browser. That's object 60, so I don't need 59 through whatever. All right, let's hide everything that we don't want to delete. So I've just hid the lid. I'm going to hit the bottom. I'm going to hide the Raspberry Pi 4. And now I can just grab all of these and say delete. And there they go. Okay, great. So now we're back to just the two bodies that we care about and the Raspberry Pi 4. Let's widen this here a little bit. Let's do 2 -2 millimeters and -2. -2, and lastly we have this one, oops, over here, and -2. Okay, so now we've got a hole for the IO. Now I would like to create, let's see, Hmm. Let's see, how would we like to do this? We've got the mounting hole right here. Hmm. Yeah, maybe that'll work. Okay, let's go back and I actually take back the 2 millimeters that I took from this side. Let's bring that back in a little bit. Okay, we'll see if it works or not. Okay. And I'm going to take back the 2 millimeters I brought over here too. Let's go back into. So what I'd actually like to do is I would like to create some standoffs that go all the way from the Raspberry Pi 4 up. So my plan is, just so we don't have any screws on the top side of it, I'd like the screws on the bottom. Let's create some standoffs. We're gonna make, let's see, we're gonna make half of this the lid. So basically everything from here over, I would like to make as like a lid. And you're gonna mount it from the bottom. So you're gonna put the screws in from the bottom. So you would stick your Raspberry Pi 4 in the top part. It would rest on some standoffs that are going to be created here in a moment, and then let's go. I'll show you. It'll be easier to show you. Let's go here. Let's just do that then. 3 and 4. So I got my 4 donuts selected here. Let's bring back our lid, and we're going to do an extrude. We're going to bring it all the way to the. Oops, it looks like I missed one. 2, 3, and 4. Let's bring back our lid and let's do an extrude all the way out. And it looks like it's missing one again. Okay, let's go ahead and hide the Raspberry Pi 4. We're going to say okay. And I guess we'll do the other 3 now. And we're going to hide the Raspberry Pi 4 again. We're going to say okay. Okay, so now we've got these 4 cylinders here. And I'm going to take a little bit off just because I don't want everything to be perfect. When you 3D print it, it's not going to be perfect. So I would prefer them to be a little smaller than they are right now, just so that we don't end up with any interference issues later. So let's take, let's say 0.5 millimeters off, just so we don't run into any issues where things are too rigid or we have gaps. It's better to go on the side of caution. So I've got these pillars here. I would like to make them a little bit more sturdy. I don't want them to be kind of free floating. So what I think I'll do is I will create a sketch here and there we go. So I'm going to make some supports over here and let's do it over here too. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'll show you why here in a minute. Let's see if a box will work better. Actually, I think it kind of does. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take these funky shapes that I've just created. Not all of them are perfect, and they don't have to be. I'll show you why here in a moment. And let's extrude them all the way up. Yep, and we're going to say join. So now we have these support columns here. Let's bring back our shape here. Looks like I made myself a little bit of a problem here. Let's, actually that should be okay. All right. So what I would like to do now is I would like to divide my case. So we're going to do something called a split. So I've got these two pieces here. They're touching, and I'm actually going to combine them right now to make it into one case here. And now I'm going to click this bottom piece, and I'm going to say, let's split the body. Because I'd like my split to be down here at the bottom. We can put the screws in from the bottom. We can make it so that the top part of the case looks a little bit cleaner. There's no screw holes. So I've selected the bottom. It says splitting tool, and I'm going to say, yep, extend the splitting tool, and we're going to see what happens here in a moment. So we just had a whole bunch of bodies that got created. I'm okay with that. Let's go ahead and remove this top piece first. Oops, there we go. And we're going to see that we have these four standoffs now are now separate bodies. We're actually going to recombine them. So let's go ahead and grab this. We're going to say combine. And we're going to pick, let's see, bodies 1, 2, 3, and 4. Join. So now we're back to one body here. And now we've got this lid here. And now we have a case that screws from the bottom. So we could now print this out and we could probably test it with a Raspberry Pi 4. The one thing that I am going to take a look at real quick. So if I'm using screws and I want them to engage with the other mating part. Now when it comes to 3D printed materials, there's a couple different ways you could do it. You could use a nut and a bolt. You could use a screw, and you could actually thread it into the plastic. And so in that particular case, we would actually make the inside diameter here a little bit smaller than the screw so that when we go to screw it in, the threads are just going to dig into the plastic and it's going to kind of tap it for us. So that's my preferred method. And if you want to get really fancy, you could actually grab like a soldering iron and you could grab some of the threaded inserts and you could actually press them into the hole. I haven't tried that yet. I would like to, but it's not for this video. So let's go ahead and let's hide our Raspberry Pi. And let's hide our, oops, this is the one that I wanted. So let's go ahead and let's create a sketch. And let's start with this one here real quick. So you can see the inside of this circle here. It's not perfect. We're gonna, let's see. We're gonna try and make that cleaned up a little bit. Let's see. Where's the center here? It doesn't want to give me the center. That's okay. All right, and I guess we're going to create another circle here. So let's make this 2.25. Let's make it 2.2. That should give us some room for the threads to engage. Let's come over here and let's do the same thing. So I'm going to create a circle. Let's do a 2-point circle just so that I can, oops, I'm not working with that shape. All right, I guess we're only working with one at a time. Let's go over here and let's say finish sketch. And what did I do? I don't think I did something right here. No, I did. Okay. So what I really want is this piece right here. So let's go ahead and let's make this a little, let's extrude it all the way down. There we go. Let's do to object. Okay. So now we've made that whole 2.2 millimeters in diameter, which should probably be good for a 2.5 millimeter bowl. Let's go ahead and do the same thing over here. So let's map this circle. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's make it 2.2 and sketch. Let's grab this piece here. We're going to extrude and we're going to go all the way down to the bottom and join. There we go. Let's do that 2 more times and I think we'll actually be good for this case. Nope, I'm not done with that. Edit sketch. Let's add that circle and let's make it 2.2 millimeters. Grab that. We're going to extrude and let's do to object and join. And we've got one more to do. Let's finish this out. And I rushed again. Cancel. Let's edit sketch. And let's make that 2.2 again. And we'll end it. And we are going to zoom in here. We're going to do an extrude to object. And let's bring it all the way down. Okay. Okay, that should be good then. All right. So let's put everything back together. So there's our shell. And then here's our Raspberry Pi here. So there you have it. There's a Raspberry Pi 4 case. And we made it in just under an hour, I think, which is not too bad. Um, I will actually post these up on Thingiverse for you if you actually want this. So usually when you go and you design something like this, you'd print it out, then you'd find all the mistakes that you made. You'd make the changes and you'd make another revision of it. So everything that I've done, I don't think I've ever made anything right the first time. I've come really close, but there's always something that you'll forget. I'm sure there's a power button here I'm forgetting or it wasn't on the model. So you always may have to go back and make another revision. So here's my video on creating a single board computer case. This is kind of like a tutorial, like get you started. Hopefully this was insightful for you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you have more questions or any comments, leave those in the comments below. You can always reach out to me on Discord for any help with any of your projects. And thanks for watching.